Grand Rising family is Shay Seeking, and this is Not Your Mama's Bible Study, along with a little bit of His Story Lied. On this channel, we are just basically bringing forth puzzle pieces in order for you to use your own discernment, knowledge, wisdom, and guidance in order to, for us to, as one whole, in somewhat of unity, to find out what has happened to our people, meaning the original peoples of the America, okay, that most of us think that we are actually from Africa, okay, and that is basically another lie that his story told. So again, we are here to bring forth information that may not have been well known by our people and others um, in order to further enlighten ourselves on what we should do to take steps forward. Okay, so again, I'm not here to tell you what it is, what it ain't. I'm just sharing with you guys what it looks like to me and sharing different information so that we can get a deeper look on actually what has actually happened. Okay. Um, so on this channel, we see that the world is a stage. Everything has pretty much been flipped on its back or upside down. And that we need to actually do our own research because school and churches and other institutions such as these have been given uh, false or a very limited, okay, understanding as to what anything really is that we think that we know. So let's go ahead and go into these Negro laws of South Carolina. I did one on this um, for the earlier version um, of these laws. And this one, I'm going to take my time and we are going to dissect this and show how his story and the Bible link up in order to tell our story a little bit better, but on a higher level. So again, in order to better instill a somewhat of a future at all for our children and their children, we need to actually stop playing around, cease to be entertained, turn your back on those churches. Okay, some of them know exactly what they're doing, and some don't have any idea, and um, and then realize. Okay, use your real eye to realize what the school system actually is, and it doesn't really teach you anything you really need to know. Anything that you'll, we can all attest to this at in our 20s, 30s, and 40s. That you barely remember anything that you have learned in school or which was implanted in your mind in order to give you a perception as to how things are going. Um, Again, let's go ahead and look into this. Okay, so this is the Negro Laws of South Carolina, Chapter 1, the status of the Negro, his rights and disabilities. Again, the fact that we looked at the term Negro, we're going to be doing a lot of etymology here, and we're going to be dipping into the in Genesis, okay? But it's funny how it's saying the status of the Negro, his rights and disabilities, and the fact that I'm doing a lot of research on these women, these clans of women that were warriors, that were high priestess, that were running things in their tribes, or Amazonian women. Um, and the fact that America is said to have been a matriarchal society prior to these people coming in. So when we look at this, remember in the biblical text, even using etymology and the concordance, that a lot of these terms, as far as like wife and marrying, can also do have something to do with the joining of two people or the joining of aliens and immigrants to a certain land, which they will take in as their wife to have and to hold, along with all of the inhabitants that are on that particular land. Okay, so I was just saying it's funny how the status of the Negro, his rights and disabilities, and the fact that they are saying that the Negro is a term that was used for the so called African um, peoples. We'll go through it and read it exactly. And the fact that we know that out of the 250,000 total around that number total of Africans, so-called Africans that were brought here from so-called Africa during the entire slave trade was only around 250,000, and most of them were men and boys. Because what had happened is they chose to use the American Mother Earth, the one that resided here, okay, in order to create, like in Genesis, they were creating a subgroup or races, or creating their creatures, which are immigrants and immigrants and aliens and foreign entities or foreign peoples. So they took it upon themselves to come here, slew and kill the great warriors, sometimes even shipped them off to places in Africa and other places, okay, in order to keep the women, okay, and then multiply, okay. Okay, this is why when we're talking about in Genesis to subdue the earth, we've already looked at the etymology, we've already looked at a concordance, and earth can be pertaining to people or earthlings. Those are people of the earth that were the very first inhabitants of a place prior to any colonization. So again, those would have been melanated people, okay, with all different types of hair textures. Okay, so right here, it says Section 1, the Act of 1740. Section 1 declares that all Negroes and Indians, okay, to be, Indians to be slaves, the offspring to follow. It's funny how we use offspring because we're talking about offspring in Genesis 1, okay, to follow the condition of the mother, okay. What is the mother? The mother had ties to the land, but her appearance may not have been fair. Her appearance would have been darker, okay, something of the earth, okay, and that such slaves are chattels personal, okay. So we're going to go back and read right here when it says all Negroes and Indians, free Indians in amity, okay, with this government, and enmity, okay. I show you guys on the caste system how there's enmity or a space or a divide, like God chose to put between a certain seed and a certain seed, her seed and his seed. Now, his seed would be all of the foreigners that now call themselves Americans because they've taken that term from you and given it to their offspring and their children that are a lighter version, okay. Now, amity, okay, would mean that this is a togetherness or something that they have formed together, where enmity is a severance or a separation of. But we're going to go ahead and break this down real slow.